Welcome back to the Torque Test channel. We have a good one for you today. We've tested around 50 impact wrenches on this channel now. Some were good but unsurprisingly good. Some were surprising but not for good reasons. But if you checked those two boxes in our half-inch impact wrench testing, quite like the mystery gun from South Main Auto channel we tested around 4 months ago, that ever since has perched itself at the very top of our rank list, mocking us with its insane power runs, complete guesses for its stats, and our inability to purchase it. But you get no free lunches on this channel. If you want to stay at the top, you'd better defend the belt.
Oh man.
Today we have the title belt holder in actual retail packaging because it's supposedly here, the Astro 1894 Thor half-inch impact wrench. It boasts exactly no power figures on the box, just a picture of Thor's hammer on the back and a few other Easter eggs. I'll let you guys find out if you pick one up. But if you visit the old interwebs, you can see that Astro rates this tool for a very high, albeit not groundbreaking, 940 foot-pounds max torque, with a note that it, quote, compares to a 1600 foot-pound nut-busting model, since they don't really advertise those figures on any of their tools. A bit cheeky, but okay. Today we're going to find out if it does compare to monster nut-busting spec tools like Milwaukee's high torque 1400 foot-pounds and Matco's MT 2779's 1600 foot-pounds, and also frankly if it can back up the power we saw from Eric's prototype model that left a lasting impression on the rank chart. The Astro Thor, which costs $188, came with a 3/8 to 1/4 inch NPT fitting reducer in the box, and the specs page mentions you can use either a 1/2 inch or 3/8 airline with those corresponding fittings as long as there are high flow. Since the specs page is how we set up all of our air and cordless impacts on this channel, and since Astro doesn't require 1/2 inch in those specs, we're going to be using a 3/8 line with high flow fittings like we normally do and as we did in its original episode 21. What we and maybe you want to know is this model that you can actually purchase as powerful as Eric's prototype? Do pre-market tool testers get a hopped up version that are then restricted at the factory for durability reasons? Or maybe was South Main Auto's gun actually underperforming from being abused for a year before we tested it? No matter how you look at it, this gun is big and, well, not big at the same time. It's like they took a page out of Makita's book by making it a chunker, but not all that long. 6.7 inches long makes this one of the shortest full-size 1/2 inch impacts we've tested, but you won't find your brain thinking about how small it is when you're actually holding it. Definitely some Thor's hammer vibes in the hand, thanks to what they call an oversized air motor and hammer assembly that in episode 21 we mentioned looked more like a 3/4 inch impact than a 1/2 inch one. That's due to these hammers and air rotor here, which are sort of like a softball versus regulation baseball situation. The anvil wings in particular are super huge here. And then when you take out the cylinder, this hole comes out of the housing. It's got brass inserts. And when you compare that to the IR, the smaller hammers, the air rotor itself is about 10% shorter and 20% smaller in diameter. And let's take a look at that air motor. Once you get this out, you can see that the air rotor is super finely ground, like smooth. It's got 7 of these phenolic resin rotors, and its overall size is just kind of big. This end plate's kind of same story. Impressive machining, deep grooves, really good air passageway flow there. And then the air cylinder, again, really deep machine marks for the air passages. You can see in the top those really big air passage holes for the exhaust and intake. Then both sides of the rotor sit on these shielded Taiwanese bearings. The trigger's all this solid brass sort of action right there. It's quite nice. And you can just see how big each of these ports are compared to the average air tool we show on this channel. This tool uses up a lot of airflow. Makes sense. But that large air turbine action does come at a price. The gun's rated at 6.5 CFM in a continuous use setting. Not the highest we've ever seen full stop, but take the 1600 foot-pound MT 2779 we'll be comparing against today, and that's 4.9 CFM. In the IR 2235 Ti Max, which loved extra air a whole lot in our episode 27, that's 6 CFM. This definitely feels more targeted to the professional shop, or if at home, really in short bursts for those beans. Let's get into those beans. Out of the box, this impact has a 2-stage trigger, as it's called. and it's very too stagey. We slapped some oil on it and gave it some love. It improved throughout the day and even more so this week, but is sort of notchy out of the box. We didn't notice it on Eric's well-used model at all. Our first test is called working torque, which is 5 seconds in forward at 90 psi in the tool with it running. Here's how the Matco and M18 high torque did. And here's the Thor. So the M18 high torque comes out ahead, with both the Thor and Matco guns making about the same at 528 versus 523. More to the point, the Thor is actually down in this run compared to the South Main Auto one, but only 5 foot-pounds. That's well within the normal fluctuation between runs, sort of. Let's see if in this next test that trend continues and if this Thor is able to actually still come out on top within this heavy-hitting crowd in our max torque 10 seconds in reverse test. Here's the M18 up against the Matco. And here's the 1894. Okay, now we're talking. That's 751 with gains really everywhere on the curve, more peak power, and more dynamic torque. Here's how this new Thor stacks up against the used one from 4 months ago. So most of the run is about the same, with gains towards the end when things are getting really tough and tight. If there is some wear on Eric's gun causing this change, it's not a lot. Our last test is called best case scenario. This is also in reverse, but 150 psi static line pressure this time. The running pressure drops to whatever the gun causes it to drop to. Here's all 3 guns on screen. .825. That's like 3/4 inch cordless numbers more than half-inch air. And it beat out the South Main Auto care package as well, again with mirror-like power curves, but some gap at the end representing a gain from the new model, but only 2% or so on this one. All that high-pressure water abuse from Eric over the course of a year resulted in about a 2% difference, all said and done, on a long test like this. It would have been cool to see 850, 875, or something really earth-shattering and fun, but if you had to choose between the two, I think you would prefer this tool holding up over time over a better initial result. Now here's that 1894 with the Bosch Pro Factor using an 8 amp hour pack attached, which has been the most powerful half-inch you can buy. We've tested up till now, as well as the Milwaukee 2767-20 high torque using an HD 12.0 strapped on. That HD 12.0 brings a whole lot of dynamic torque down low, likely quite great at busting rust-free, but ultimately the Thor continues its trend today of being on the top at the end. With the new power runs, specs, and price now available, let's see how the Thor does on our rank chart. Starting at the top for a change, the 1894's power runs are here, which get turned into points as usual: 53, 75, and 83. It's not a long tool by any means, so with those power runs, this should be a good one. The 825 is divided by its 6.7 inch length for 123.1 foot-pounds per inch. Kind of cheating like Makita does by using its size and other dimensions rather than length. The torque claim of 940 was a bit less than we previously assumed, and it gets a 88 or 88% of its claimed figure, matching that of the Matco gun, but not touching that impressive Bosch Pro Factor, which is the most modest of the bunch. $188 is not exactly up there. There's only a couple of tools on this list below that, and due to its high power on the dyno today, that makes for 65.8 points, the most we've seen in a long time on this channel. Total that up, and that's 487.9, enough to keep this tool more firmly than ever in its first place slot. That's out of a theoretical 500 we started this list with, nearly messing up our whole math metric in general. And here's how the gun ranks strictly on power, ignoring our point system and categories altogether. Third overall. When you consider the costs of a tool like this, which is less than a HD 12.0 battery, many of our viewers want everything from high torques to impact drivers tested with, the very apparent but very different advantages of an air tool are sort of revealed. You need to be tethered to something with actual CFM potential to get the most out of this tool, so you probably won't be bringing this to your local junkyard. But with the power displayed today and the performance of one after being abused by Eric for a year, for those using tools professionally, sometimes it can be hard to ignore a sub 7-inch, sub 5-pound tool that can really deliver the beans. More high power impacts in both cordless and Eric to come. Subscribe if that thing sounds like your cup of tea, and thank you for watching.